So welcome everybody. Good evening and welcome to the October 2020 session of the Richmond Art Gallery's Artist Salon program. My name is Kathy Tycholis. I'm your host for tonight, and I will be joined by our guest artist, Amy Stewart. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that although we're all zooming in from various locations, the land that the Richmond Art Gallery is located on is on the traditional and ancestral territories of the Hunkaminam speaking peoples. This is a language spoken by Musqueam and many of the nations along the River Delta, the Fraser River Delta, I should say. And we recognize our institution currently occupies this traditional territory, and we are very grateful to create, live, and work on this land. And I'm also very grateful for all of you tuning in tonight. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who are new to the Artist Salon program, it is a monthly series of talks designed just for visual artists. It is a mix of professional development, inspirational stories, sharing of resources, and hopefully encourage you to just keep making your art. The salon also exists as a Facebook group. It is mainly for Lower Mainland artists, and we share posts, open calls, any other Pro-D opportunities in the area, shows. Feel free to share your exhibitions on there as well. It really is a space for us to connect with local artists, so I welcome you all to join us there as well. I wanted to invite our lovely guest tonight, Amy. Amy, I saw her, or actually I heard her on a podcast. I think it was the Art and Cocktails podcast.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how she was working as a youth and family worker for many years, but always painted on the side, and gave up her job and became a full-time artist, which for me is always an inspiring thing to hear. And she also talked a little bit about things that, how she's sort of managed her way through the world of being a full-time artist, including commissions, including working with interior design firms. And so I just thought she'd be a great guest for all of you out there, because I know I get a lot of questions on all the different ways to make it as a full-time artist. And I thought Amy's story that I heard on the podcast was really inspiring. So I right away reached out to her, and I'm so glad she said yes, and welcome her to the Gallery Artist Salon. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Richmond Art Gallery and Kathy for inviting me to speak. For those of you who don't know me, I am an abstract artist. I have a studio at Granville Island. So if you've gone to the Opus at Granville Island, you've probably walked by my studio there. Tonight I'll share my experience with you. I'm full disclosure, still learning, and my ride so far hasn't been that smooth, but it's definitely been an adventure that is very worth it. So yeah, feel free to ask questions along the way, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. But I'll get started. First, I'm taking you way back because my childhood is still very important in my life today, and I look back on it a lot. So I grew up in 108 Mile House, which most people don't know where the heck that is. But it's 5 hours north of Vancouver. I grew up in a log house surrounded by woods and in a big valley. I spent a lot of time with my brother and my family. We had some other kids in the community, but my parents didn't have us on the TV very often, and really encouraged us to get outside and create. And they were out there too. But for the most part, you got bored and you created. And that feeling I had when I was a child, I've always tried to somehow carry it with me today and in my work. And I know it's because of creativity. But it wasn't always that way. When I was 10 years old, we moved to Vernon, which is a beautiful place. I got into sports. We grew up not knowing any artists. I thought you could maybe be an art teacher, but I didn't think you could get a job as an artist. The mentality around me was more not a real job. I know you've all heard that. And I guess I believed that too. I didn't know what my future held, even though that's what I used to do. I turned to sports and friends and I guess more of a social life and less a creative life. Uh, but there was one part of my life that really stood out that shaped my future, and that was in grade 9. And in grade 9, my friend, she died from cancer. A family friend died from suicide. My grandpa died and my horse died. And it was obviously that's a lot of stuff, especially when you're 13. But it shaped the thoughts that when I grow up, I want to help people. And so I went through high school, did everything I had to do, and then I entered child and youth care in Edmonton. And I felt useful. I felt like I was on the right track. I took a program in the Netherlands for art and play therapy, and that's when creativity came back to my life. And I used it with my clients. I had lots of kids that needed creativity to process the big things they're going through. But I also started my career. I was working in a treatment home for severely abused kids. And I realized when they talked about self-care, that taking a bath or going for a run, I didn't have that kind of brain that could relax after hearing stories and working with the kids and seeing the pain that I was seeing daily. And so I started to bring the painting into my life then. As still, I never thought this is something people do. I mean, something other people do for sure, but not something I do. So I'll just use it to process pain. And there was something about just moving the paint from place to place. It didn't matter what I was making. I was never drawn to drawing or making flower or paintings or anything like that. I just like to move the paint. And I found that really calming. I have cheat sheets here, so I have to make sure I go on. So art was solely used to prevent burnout and to process the traumatic experiences I was witnessing through my work. I worked in a lot of different settings. There wasn't a lot that, looking back, that I didn't see. It was a really hard work, but I also really loved it. I felt like I had a purpose and a plan. And so I kept doing it. I took breaks now and then. I tried starting a business with wool. That was a learning curve. Anyways, but I had my daughter in 2010. And when I was pregnant with her, I was working as a victim support worker for children and youth. And it was hard. I would go to the courts with my clients and they would see their accusers. And it was quite a horrible process for them. And I felt that I had a place to support them and advocate for them. And so once I got pregnant, I remember my last client I completely started to tear up. And I thought, I think I'm done. I think I can't do this anymore. I have a scared child here and I can't be there for them. And then I thought, I'm too attached as a mother now. I don't think I can do this. And so I'm not sure if I was burnt out or if it was just the attachment. But either way, I knew I couldn't do it anymore. And so I found that time probably one of the most difficult times of my life because I felt lost, just like everybody who is transitioning through a job and they don't know what they want to be when they grow up. And I have this little baby and I can't imagine going back to school or what job I want to do. But I wanted to paint to feel better. The anxiety was high at that time and painting always helped that. And so I just started, and I had an artist all along in my family, which we didn't really know that she was an artist until my grandpa passed away. But my grandma Jean is my hero, huge inspiration. She painted once grandpa passed, and she painted with I don't know if a vengeance is the right word, but she just madly painted. She would go out to her garden. She would take pictures of her flowers. She would take every watercolor course you could imagine. She had my uncle build a studio onto her house. She was fully in it. She made her own frames. She did everything. And I thought, how cool that nothing is stopping her. Her passion is so strong. And I didn't believe that I could still be an artist, but I thought, I'm going to paint like that until I figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And so I painted and painted and paint. Oh, this is my grandma's painting. So I have a ton of them. And at the time we were living in, these are mine, but it's from when we were living in Vancouver Island. And I had a big basement. And so I set up the studio. And when my daughter was napping or when somebody else was taking care of her, I would sneak down and I would paint these huge canvases. And I would continually just pump this every kind you can imagine. I would just make, and I sold them to family and friends. Well, I gave away a lot, to be honest. I probably lost a lot of money on the way I valued my work. And of course, all of it has tons of texture. So it's all molding paste and crackle paste, everything golden had to offer. That was what my weakness was. So I did that for a while, a long time. I guess we were there for 4 years. And we decided to move back to the city. And we moved into a small condo in Granville Island and on the seawall. So I thought, I can't paint here. I actually tried. My husband and daughter kind of got fed up. So I really had no choice but to find a studio. And I couldn't afford, I was shocked the studio prices in Vancouver. And so I hunted around for a bit and I found a studio at the Beaumont Studios, and it was a shared space. And somehow I lucked out and got that, but I felt like a complete imposter. I had like no business painting. Who was I? I wasn't an artist, and I was surrounded by the sea of artists. I mean, the Beaumont Studios, I think there's 2 of them, and it felt like there were 100 artists and crazy talented people. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I went to work every day with those butterflies thinking, what am I doing? Like, I'm a fraud. But I was welcomed into my shared studio space by these 2 beautiful people. So Erica Peng and Lisa Howe were a huge support in my stepping out there and getting out to the world and getting my art noticed by people. If you can find your people, I can't tell you how important it was. They encouraged me. I probably had been there for 2 months and they encouraged me to do a group show. I was so terrified, but I said yes. And their attitudes and inspiring ways of we can do this and everything's great. And it was a total success and shocking. And I started to then think, oh, there's something to this. Maybe I can be someone who makes art. I still wasn't comfortable calling myself an artist, but someone who makes art sort of fit. I also added my parents to the slideshow because I love them, and they have bought all my work for years. Their house is full of every different style. And then I have the support of this guy who I married, who is much better at the business part than me. He's a pilot, but in his spare time, he packages and does other things. Early on, Erica told me about this woman named Penny Lane Shen, and she said it's good to have a consult with her. And I didn't want to at all. I thought, I don't want to have somebody come and spot that I'm not an artist and tell me to get lost or tell me my work is horrible. See, my life was all, I knew resources for kids who were abused. I knew how to help kids. I knew how to get them therapy. I knew how to spot the signs of abuse. I didn't know anything about the art world at all, but I knew I needed help. So I got tough and I called Penny Lane, and I probably didn't sleep before she came, but I was so nervous, and she showed up and she said, well, where's your work? And I thought, oh, that would have been important to have my work here. It was all at a pizza restaurant. And so we sat down at a computer and looked at my work online. And my work was all over the place. I had thick molding paste. I had watercolor drips here and there. I had other paintings that looked completely different than the next. And she was the kindest person, and just asked me what I liked about each one. And then she'd show me like sections. Do you like this section? And she put it in ways that I could see that, oh, I don't know why I painted that like that, but I really like how I painted that. And so she also asked me, about my website and Instagram and all those things that I just didn't really have a clue about. Let's see. So here's some of the work that she saw. So I went through a full leaf kind of stage with molding paste, and then more negative space, but still needed the molding paste. There's something about that. And then less molding paste, but still all over the place. And then I wanted to switch. There was a couple more in between those, but Penny Lane encouraged me more negative space and to kind of take what I liked. And at the time I really liked that transparent, that kind of lacy look. And then I started to add my solids back in and explore a little bit. And then this style with kind of 4 elements or 5 elements, and it's gotten really quite more minimal, which seems to be what I'm drawn to. I don't know if it's because the world is crazy and this makes me feel better. So I don't know where it will go from here, but I hope it will just keep flowing how it comes out, because it's I really find it very calming to paint this way. Okay, and then back to my meeting with Penny Lane, she said, are you going to join up for Thrive? And I had no idea what she was talking about again, and said yes, because she scared me. So I said yes, easily. And she was right. I needed Thrive. At the time, I was part of Thrive Mastermind, and we met every Friday, once a month or something. And I was part of the program for 2 years. And the first time, again, imposter syndrome, and was completely terrified. But Jamie and Tara, they make all the artists feel comfortable. And I think right now it's a membership, like online. And I don't know if they have their mastermind program, but if you can find a group of artists to connect with and talk about resources with, show your work to, get feedback. I couldn't believe how beneficial it was. And it was artists who were on all different levels. So a lot to add, a lot to learn from, and a community was made, because I paint alone like so many people, and it's isolating. And it's so nice to have, I felt like I was having a little business meeting. And not only that, I was connecting with this community of wonderful people and friends. And so if you can find something like that, I still connect with them today. So we used, during Thrive, there was a lot of people with different skills, and we would trade and get help on things like how to do newsletter, how to sign up for this show or that show, who to connect with, how to take good photos. But now that I've had some sales and I can pay people, I've used professionals for that. And so I have an editor. I don't know a lot of artists who can do, actually I know one who can do everything, but I cannot write an artist statement. I mean, I can, you just wouldn't want to read it. And photography isn't my thing. Even I can't figure out the lighting for this video call, but I have found really amazing people in the community. So Jillian Bright Editing is my editor, as she is to many other artists. And so if I need to apply for a show, she'll help me with my words there, my artist statements. I'll give her an idea and I'll write a rough copy of a series that I'm working on, and she'll be able to ask questions and get all the information I'm trying to get out, but in words that the reader could understand and connect with, where I'll just stick to the painting. So that's one resource there. This is my photographer. She's amazing. She comes to the studio, and I do a lot of studio shots on my own. And then when Britt comes, it's like night and day. Her eye is much better. I think photography is an art as well. So I hire her, and she does a lot of photos that I need for editorial, and it's nice to have all those photos, because when somebody reaches out and they're like, well, we need pictures to repost on our Instagram or in our magazine or whatever they need your pictures for, it's so beneficial to have them professionally done and done well. And then other people see that, and then they may ask you, because everything looks how it should. I also have a bookkeeper, because this is not for all artists, I'm sure, but the artists I know really have a hard time understanding when to charge GST, when to charge PST, and how the heck to put it all together. And so that completely boggles my mind. And you can get some good rates on bookkeeping. This is the one that I use, but there's lots out there. I don't expect artists to be able to do it all. Some can, but if you can't afford to do services yet, then I would suggest reaching out to somebody that you know and doing trades, or something that will help, because it really makes a difference. Another thing that's really helped me along the way is collaboration. So these two I met in Thrive, and they're almost like family to me now. We connected, and there's other Thrive members missing from this picture that I feel very close to as well. But the three of us decided our work looked really great together. And we thought, if we are all together, everyone we know, we just bring so much more exposure to our work if we invite people into a show that we may have put on. Or so if you know Granville Island, we rented a space and put on a show for a month, and it was like a little pop-up shop, pop-up gallery, and we continued to put on shows together. And we recently applied to be at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre for a show there for 2021. Hopefully it happens, on looking on the bright side. But I think if you can connect with artists, and especially artists where your work shows well together, it's really beneficial, because they bring their clients, their friends see your work. It just grows your audience. And if you can see in the back, sometimes people would buy the vignettes that we'd made. So they'd buy it all for their wall, which was really cool that we had it to look good for all of us. And then I want to talk a little bit about Instagram. Most of my clients come from Instagram, or they're friends of clients who have bought from Instagram. And sometimes it's people walking by Granville Island, but I don't have an open studio. It's just a working studio. So it's not a lot of foot traffic coming in. And so I put a lot of effort into Instagram and making connections there. I have I've learned a lot through connecting with other artists, what not to do. I mean, if you look way down on my Instagram, I'm sure I have pictures of my feet in a lake, or, things that don't have anything to do with art, which might work for some people. But as soon as I kept it very art focused and included pictures of myself, which at first felt awkward, but people like to see who's making the work. But it's helped a lot, not just having a square of my work, because I think people can't tell what your work looks like, and it's so much better if you can have it in a setting. So I take pictures myself, and then I have my photographer take pictures of them in the studio. But I also do a lot of writing with my posts. Sometimes I do, but I want people to know what my work is about. And so when I work on a series, I like to put the statement on my Instagram, and it's just another way to connect with a lot of people. This series was really important to me in particular, and I think it made the most really meaningful connections for this series, because it was called Dream Life, and I had Chrissy Arsenault, she did the graphic design there, and then I had my editor do the writing. And what it was about, we had a year where we lost 4 loved ones, and it was when art therapy became really central in my life. And I had always painted to process the pain myself, but this time I felt like I would share what this art was about. And it was about grief, but it was also about beauty. And so I shared it with people, and I was blown away from the feedback. It felt like a little bit of my old work, connecting with community and people being vulnerable and open about their own loss, which I found very comforting, because I don't know about all of you, but talking about loss in my community is uncomfortable. And so I like to bring that part of my real who I am in and connect with people, because I'm a community builder, and I really care about the community, especially when people are having a hard time. I still have a piece of my old job in me all the time and want to make those connections. Another series that I post a lot about on Instagram is my Reimagined landscape series. And I think it's so popular because I think I get the most commissions through this series, because people are so connected with nature, and it's just a simple version of how I look at nature, and then I kind of make it my own. And especially now with COVID and people longing for that calm feeling, nature has been, I think, calling all of us. And so this series has been quite popular, which I love to do, because I also feel the same when I'm in nature. And this is an installation shot I found with designers. It was really important to show my work in a way that just wasn't, just on my studio wall or something, to see it in setting. So for clients and designers to see it this way for their clients, I did lots of mock-ups, and it really helps. Those are the days that I have the most links to my website. Those are the days I have the most interest in my work, and those are usually the days that there's a higher chance of having a sale too, of course. So I use, I know there's tons of platforms for these mock-up and installation shots, but I found them years ago on Etsy, and it's just Etsy mock-up rooms, and they've done really well when I don't have a place to hang and take a picture. There's another example, and then it's just done on Photoshop. Another big connection that has made my career more successful is applying for different places across Canada. I sent Art Interiors an email a few years ago and sheepishly said, "This is my work. If you like it, let me know," and sent some images. Not very professional, but they decided they liked it. And I send a lot of paintings to Toronto, and they work very closely with a lot of designers in Toronto. They have a lot of great clients as well, but the designers will use the paintings, and if you allow them to, on set or in magazines or whatever. So I said yes to that, and the exposure's been great. I've found my work on HGTV, and I never know when it's going to be on. So somebody will tell me, "I just saw your painting on TV," or "I just saw it in a magazine," or, but the designers I've worked with have been really good at giving the artist's name and thanking Art Interiors, which I think is really important that we're getting credit for having our work up there. There's my painting on Marilyn Dennis, and I had a client call me or text me and said, "There's somebody who's copied your painting, and it's on Marilyn Dennis," which is a TV show from Toronto, and it was my painting. So it was really cool to see that my paintings are getting out there while I'm, in my studio unaware. And another way I got my work out there was putting it out in front of clients, obviously, however I could. And one of those ways was Address Assembly. It's a design show here in Vancouver, and I took part for a couple of years. But I think it's in Toronto now. But it's like a trade show, but not a trade show. So all the people that made everything were there, the couches, everything has an artist behind it. And you're there kind of, networking, but you don't have to stand and sell your work. Your cards are there and people will direct clients to you. But it's just a really nice way to interact with clients and a new audience. And this is where I found a lot of designers would go, because they're looking for all not just art, they're looking for the couches, the pottery, everything. So it's really good for connections if you can find something like that. And I know there's IDS West here, which is I would like to go to. It's quite a bit more, but I think this kind of stuff is really beneficial. I haven't talked this long in quite some time. There's another photo from Address.
Can I ask a question, Amy?
Sure.
Just because this popped up in the comments, you mentioned a little bit about the cost for that. Is it really expensive to show in Design Assembly, or the other one you mentioned, Ideas West?
Yeah, IDS West, I remember being quite expensive, and it was a bit too intimidating when I thought about applying, because this one, it was easy. I just brought my paintings and they kind of set it up themselves. For me to stand there for a trade show and just talk is not my comfort zone. So it's something I would like to do, but it costs a lot more. Address Assembly doesn't have the same cost to it. I can't remember what it was, but it was definitely a lot lower than IDS West. And of course now I think IDS is on remote locations, or was here in Vancouver while COVID's happening, and a lot of these shows are now online. So it's a good time to take advantage of entering these shows at a lower cost. But it's definitely something that has been worth it for my business.
So someone else just asked if you could just share the name again of the Vancouver show. And then I was also, I guess if there's ones you might recommend for someone starting out, because I know like a big investment is kind of scary.
Oh yeah. I have a few coming up that are much easier on the wallet. But this one was called Address Assembly, and the other one is IDS West. And then I have some more that I'll list throughout, because I didn't start with these ones.
Great. Thanks. I'll disappear again.
Okay, bye. Okay, so speaking of comfort levels, a lot of artists are not good schmoozers. I through my whole career, because I was so scared starting to be an artist, and it took me probably 2 years and into it till I said I was an artist, and even saying it, rolling artist off the tongue, I was laughing to myself because I thought I've tricked them somehow. But I started to believe it, and I thought, okay, that scared me and it's working. Having a studio scared me, and it happened. Having my first show terrified me, and I did it. So my whole, if something scares me, because I'm intimidated, I generally say yes to it. And so this might not be scary for most people, but going to a party is terrifying for me. And talking about art is terrifying. So because of that, I went, because I wanted to grow my business. I want to be successful with my work. And so if you can go to these gallery events and design show events, any kind of thing, bring a buddy. You can see Shira in the picture there. She, you should find a wingman and then just go for it. Because that's made a huge difference. And you see people you haven't seen in a while, and they may ask you what you're doing, and the next thing you know, you're doing a commission for their living room, and then their friend wants one. And so I'd say do what scares you within reason. Applying for things is another really important thing. I think in this day and age where we have a computer to shield us from fear, we can write an email instead of picking up the phone and calling. It's much easier to do. And so I applied for everything. I have slowed down a lot now because I can keep up with what I'm doing now. But then when I was trying to get clients, I would apply for everything. So this is I have 2 pieces at YVR, and which is quite funny because my husband works as a pilot and there's no connection. I got there on my own, but he walks by my work and tells everybody that he knows the artist. I also, I'm always looking for more. How else can you sell? How else can you make a living doing this? What are my options? And somebody who does art rentals for the movies reached out to me, and that was Black Market Arts. I'm not sure if they're doing it right now, but if you Google art rentals for movies, Vancouver, I think there's a couple companies that come up. I know I've seen work from the Vancouver Art Gallery rentals and sales for people who have applied and gotten into that. And so this show was called To All the Boys I've Loved Before, P.S. I Love You, like a teen kind of drama. I did 9 paintings for that, and I would bring my own style but mix it up a little bit, so you could have different styles in so it didn't look like one artist throughout the house or the scene. And I recently just loaned another piece for Lost in Space 3 or something. So it's an exciting way to rent your work out. And sometimes like these two, they're commission pieces. So they bought them, but when you work with, you know, any Netflix or something like that, typically what my experiences was we need a 6 foot by 7 foot, and it's Thursday, and you need to have it done by Sunday. And so I don't take these on too often because I usually am crying in the middle of the night thinking I can't do it, and the stress is crazy. But once you see them in a show, it's pretty cool. I also try through Instagram to get my work out to developers and designers, or in front of. So Instagram is social media, so I want to be social on there to make the connections, and I can only be myself. I can't say I like something when I don't. Or so I connect with designers that, you know, I'll say I really like your style, and then people start looking at your work and vice versa, and you make these connections. So developers and interior designers that work with developers have been really amazing for my business, because when they have 3 towers and they need to fill it with artwork, you really hope that they pick you. And it's a quick, you know, if you have the work, it's just all of a sudden all your work is gone. And if you have to do the commissions, then you're busy, and you're going to be fine because the sales are there. I also, this is Concert Properties. They have a building going up by Science World. So they hired me as part of their brand. So I did 3 paintings for them. The first one is you know, to reflect the morning, and then there's a midday one and a nighttime one, and they eloquently, of course they have somebody, not me talking about it, made it part of their brand, and this is a beautiful community. And they use the one of the paintings as the hoarding around. So if you go to that area, there's my art blown up huge all over the place, and then they would put my art on chocolate bars for their for whoever came to the show suite. And that, I think, is their pamphlet, which is a very nice book, but it was a pamphlet. And then I like to have dinners at my studio, and there's really no agenda to getting people in to eat at my studio, but I feel proud of it. And then I like to take pictures with my art and food. I think it's probably because my 2 passions colliding. And then this was always, I think this, I can give a lot of credit to Penny Lane for this. She said, apply, 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 even if you don't think you'll get in, apply for practice. And so I lots of times am blindly applying for things. And this was one of those things. I thought, ooh, it's the Jealous Curator. I love her so much. She's done so many great things for artists over the years. And I know her following is like, I don't know how many followers. Everybody feels the same. So I thought I'll just apply because Penny Lane says it's great and great practice. And so I didn't even read really much about it and knew I wouldn't get in. And then I don't know when it was, a month later, when a couple months later, I got an email and it had my name on it, and it said congratulations to the winners, or no, it said congratulations to the winners. And I thought, well, that's kind of rude to send a congrats out to the losers. And then I saw my name and I was really confused. And then it clicked in where I thought, oh my gosh, I have to get to San Francisco now, make paintings for this show. And I scrolled through all the artists and was completely intimidated. And my anxiety never went down because my 10 paintings got lost in FedEx hell, and they showed up the morning that we had to hang. I was in San Francisco well before my work was. So that was a lesson to apply, because I didn't imagine myself there, and I applied anyways, and it was an amazing experience, and it's still an amazing experience because the connections I made with the other artists there are still strong today, and I can't tell you how important it is to just put yourself out there, even when it's terrifying. And going back to the shows that you might want to look into. Of course, it's nice if you can find a little gallery space, or you're starting out, you could start off, if somebody has, after COVID, if somebody has a nice big home, you could have some friends and family into and do a little show there. That's how I first started, in an apartment. I kind of moved the table, everything out too, and had just friends and family in. But I'm part of the Vancouver Art Guild, and this is an art show in a community center. And of course, it doesn't look that fancy, but the artists have been doing this for years, and they invited me to join, but you can apply to the Vancouver Art Guild. They have one winter salon in November. This year it's online. But my first show there, I think they had 900 people come through the door, and how all those paintings are, people would just walk in and they'd grab the one they want, and then they'd go to the cash, and then they'd leave. And it was unbelievable. And it's because they have been around for a long time, and they've made sure to take everybody's email down. And so they have a huge email list and a huge following. And I remember turning around and seeing somebody cram, I think it was a 40 by 30 in their car, thinking, this is amazing. Another show, I was on the board and also participated in the West of Maine Art Walk for, I think, 3 years. I was on the board for 2, but it's a group show. And you can show in a studio if you have one, and if you don't have one, they'll try to pair you up to show with other people. And then they do a kind of an opening night at the Roundhouse Community Center, which has a beautiful gallery in it that they set up. So those are really good places to start to show your work. Of course, that's online. I'm not sure if it's happening this year, but if it is, I'm sure it's online. And then I moved to my studio at Granville Island. And so I don't do as many shows anymore, because I have a large space now, and that garage door I can open up and have an open studio. And now going to the front of that building, which has a bit more space because I keep painting bigger things. But that's the view of the inside, and one of Britt's photos, her Bright photography. And that's gone around a few times for press and stuff like that. So there's the door that can make it huge. And now I share it with my Thrive partner, Shira Gold. So I try to bring in the community when I can. This is the jazz festival, so when there's an event, kind of piggyback off a different event to get your work out there to different people. But I still do guest exhibitions. This is Ian Tan Gallery, and this was a total dream come true, because as much as I want to sell my work myself, it was really cool to be in a gallery that I really respected, and was really honored to be a part of it. And I do some other online shows, like or online platforms for selling art, like Artfully. And I also try to get my work outside of BC. So I've just signed with a gallery in New Brunswick and in London, Ontario. And So I'll talk, if there's any questions before I talk about commissions, and then we're close to the end. I'll just go into.
We have a few questions if you wanted to take them now before you go into commissions. So there was, let me see, let me go back to my list here of questions. What are the fees like for when you're renting out to the movie and TV industry?
So I just had one, the last one, it was a 40 by 30, and they're rented for a week, 10 to 12% of your retail price. So it really depends on your pricing. And I can't remember, the Netflix one was a couple of years ago now, but you just kind of negotiate a price for whatever works for you, the size. Lots of times they also buy your supplies, which is nice. But yeah, it's pretty much, and then sometimes I'll have designers that are trying, they just want to style a home, and I'll take a deposit for damage, but I'll just let them have it because it really benefits me if I can get the pictures from the styled shoot. So I usually say yes. I have had to redo a couple since everybody's sanitizing because the sanitizer is getting on my tooth.
Wow.
But for the most part, it all works out.
Great. Question about the dinners in your studio. Who would you normally invite to those?
I usually invite just my closest friends. But I did have an art party last Christmas where I invited like Thrive people and Penny Lane people in the industry, and we just kind of had a big dinner there. And it's nice to have, I mean, everyone was disappointed that this year we won't be having those kinds of things, but it's nice to have your work around art and people taking pictures of either the food or art. And it's just it's a proud moment, I think, more than a useful financial one.
Well, it's always nice to share with your community, basically. So
yeah. And I really, now that I have my art community, I really want to invest in them because I love my friends from everywhere, but I never had artist friends. And it's nice to have that relation with people who are passionate and who can understand how crazy you are about paint, or that you think Opus is a candy store, or who can understand when you're feeling like you can't paint or you're painting too much. And yeah, it's nice to have that bond with people.
Another question from Danielle. What does it mean to sign with a gallery? So I guess, are you under contract, or like with Ian Tan, are you under contract, or was it just like a one-time event? Or
yeah, to me, like, it depends on the gallery. Ian Tan, it was a guest. I was invited as a guest, so it was 10 days of my work of a series, and then anything that sold was my retail prices, and then the gallery gets 50%. But there's no contract there. Once my art is off the walls. I still honored people who came back and said, I saw your work first at Ian Tan. Then I would still honor that and split it with Ian Tan Gallery. But other galleries I've signed with, some have no contract. Some, they only take 40%. Some take 50%, and they want you there for 2 years, and then it's reassessed. And so it's different for everybody, and that's really new to me. I'm used to selling my work myself, but because I want to get more pushed out of across Canada, that this is all a bit of a learning curve for me too.
Right. And Jean was asking if you have any tips for growing an art Instagram account.
I think I learned most of it from Thrive. I think you can sign up for $25 a month, and there's other things like this, but I think they had a whole section on growing your Instagram. But I think if you're on it often, I put time away for marketing, and my marketing is on Instagram. And so I'm there with a purpose. I'm there to connect with people. I'm there to show my work. I'm there to show why I paint, what my studio looks like, to show the business and the brand. As much as passionate I am about painting, it's my business. So I treat it very much like that. And so I usually have studio shots, close-ups, and pictures of me, and installation shots, whether they're actual styled in a home or a mock-up. And I guess I just try to connect with people. If they're asking me questions, I try to get back as soon as possible. I'm trying to be as professional and prompt as I can, but I also, certain times of the day, it's not a priority at all. There's got to be some balance. I don't really know what that is, but I heard I should get some.
Well, I think every artist struggles with that balance.
Yeah.
There are a few other questions, but I think I'll let you continue on with commissions, and then maybe we'll catch up with a bunch of the questions at the end.
Sure. Okay, so commissions. When I started, I think the first person that asked me to do a commission wanted a palm tree and a beach. And if you've seen my work, nowhere have you seen a palm tree or a beach. And so that the first commission I was asked to do, I said no, because I didn't think I could do a palm tree and a beach that somebody would actually see it as that. So, but that was the first time I said no, just because I didn't see myself being able to complete the work. But I still felt like you have to take commissions. I didn't realize you can not do commissions if you don't want to. I thought if you're an artist, you do commissions. So the next commissions I was asked to make, for probably 6 months of making different commissions, I was so nervous, and I'd have to get these frames custom made, and I was almost expecting that I would get it wrong. So I would make more than one frame. My visa was not doing well then, and I continually doubted myself and tried to adapt to whatever a client wanted, whether they were picky or easygoing. I would make 3 paintings and let them choose, which was ridiculous. I still have one in my house that from, I don't know, 6 years ago. But I learned that that is not what you do, and you don't have to do commissions if you don't want to. People can buy your work. But I started to make a plan about how I wanted commissions to be through the help of Penny Lane. And I narrowed it down to, this is my work. You can choose kind of something you like about what I'm doing. We can work with colors, but it's going to look like what I'm working on. It's going to look like my series or one of my series. And otherwise, I have no desire to do it. I say it much nicer, but and so then finally I had to make on my website, this is what people see if they want a commission. Some people charge 50% increase in cost, and that might be because they don't really want commissions. I really like commissions, but it is extra time, and it's a lot of extra time because you're spending more time with the client, deciding what they may need. Sometimes you're going through pictures to see what their home looks like, and sometimes it's about the series itself. It's not so much about the painting. So they may have gone through a loss, and I had one really special commission where they wanted to honor their grandma, and they told me a story of their grandma, and so I kind of got the feeling of who she was and the colors that she liked, and so, but also the work of mine that they were really drawn to. So I made something special for that client, and I think I even asked them to name the painting, so it was that much more special, which is the kind of thing I love, because again, it brings me back to community and humanity and connecting, and that's really meaningful to me. I always ask for a 50% deposit. I have had before that, I had ordered the frames and then the client changed. And my paintings are large. So I had ordered huge frames and the client changed their mind on the frame and I was out that money. So I don't even start until I have that 50% deposit. And then I tell them it takes 4 to 10 weeks. I give myself a lot of time. For me, that's a lot of time. Depending on your art, that might not be enough. But I usually take a couple weeks to 3 weeks to finish a commission, depending on what I have on my plate. But I like to let them know it could be a while. Once it's complete, I never take picture. There's something about the feeling when you see your painting or a painting that's made for you that is just like such a downer when you see it as a photo and this little square. And even with Instagram, like everybody knows you go and see the work in real life and you're just you're really moved in a different way. So I want the client to come and view the work, unless of course they're outside of the area and I have to ship it to them. And in that case, I'll do a video because then they can see it on a wall or something like that. And I never let that painting go until the final payment is made. I've never had anybody try to scam me in any way. Well, that's not true. I've had like all those email scammers that you guys have probably had too. But when somebody is organizing a commission, but just in case, I always make sure that payment is made. If they get there and they don't like what I've made, which hasn't happened yet, or if it has, they weren't brave enough to say something. But I will just say, you can take something off the wall. I won't make another commission. They still have to pay for everything. They can just pick from my current inventory. So it won't be like months later down the road when they can pick something. They pick something, and generally people are there because they like your work. And so the thought of it going, the commission not working out, and they still get one of those paintings they see on the wall, they're usually okay with that. And then of course shipping and delivery. And I don't get a lot of questions after that. Usually most people, I've had people who want me to check in and show it as it's coming along. And I used to do that and it stressed me out so much. I just said, you'll see it at the end, because I'm the boss of me. And this is for my aunt as a commission she wanted in Whistler. And that's the end. And I think I ended it with that exhausted pose, which was I was actually stretching my back that day, but it's fitting for being an artist, because there's often weeks that I wonder, what am I doing? And those days you just got to hang on and keep painting, because your business is just going to keep growing and growing and growing, and it's so worth it. That's the end.
Great. Well, thank you, Amy. That's great. We do have a few questions coming in, or even actually questions from the beginning. So I'll go through my list of notes that I took from questions from people.
Sure.
One that came up early in the talk that I'm also curious about: how do you apply that very thin gold line that you have in your paintings?
Oh, well, it's funny because if I turn the camera, you would be like, her house is a mess. My studio is a mess. There's paint everywhere. I'm mostly dressed in clothes with paint. Even if they're brand new, I think I won't paint and then I get paint on them. But I am a complete control freak with my art. And that line, I find it like the last thing I do usually, it's very grounding. And I cut tape, and then I cut it however I want it. And then I seal the tape, and then I do the gold line, and then I rip the tape off slowly. And it reminds me of when you put glue on your hand as a kid and it dried and you could peel it off. Anyways, it's just as satisfying to me.
Sounds good. I know that feeling. Trying to see what other questions. Oh yeah, for that show in San Francisco. And I guess for any time you've had to show out, further afield, are you expected to go to the gallery, whether it's to install or just be there for the opening? And does your airfare get covered in that type of situation?
Well, I think people apply. Most of the people that applied to that show, there were some that came from other countries, but most live locally because your airfare doesn't not get covered. To maybe for really fancy galleries, but this was like a San Francisco open studios weekend, and the Jealous curator Daniel Kaiser curated it, and with Jen Tuff Gallery, and so for me, my husband's a pilot, so we travel standby, so I can kind of apply to these. I'm lucky in that way. I'm not lucky if I don't get on the plane and I've applied, but in this case, I was sort of lucky because we all got there and my paintings finally got there. But I think you are expected to be there unless otherwise stated. I would like to be there usually to represent my work.
Yeah, well, it's nice to be at the opening and see who's there and meet the people that are looking at your work. So
yeah, and sometimes they hire somebody to install and curate, and sometimes it's your section and you figure it out. That's what this was.
2 questions related to shipping. Just if you have any shipping companies you can recommend, but also can you share how you ship your larger pieces and how they're packaged, because they are very large paintings?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is to get a business account with a shipping company and contact them, and then have a meeting about like what you plan to ship, what size you plan to ship, and what they can do for you, because you'd be surprised how much cheaper it is when you're a business, and you ask those questions. I think I forget what it is. It's like 40% less or maybe more than it would without a business license. Wow. Or a business account, sorry. And then, so I used to use insulation. It was like this pink housing insulation, but it's not very good for the environment. So now I try to reuse as many products as I can that come in. So I use bubble wrap, and then cardboard, maybe 2 cardboard boxes, and Jay builds a box. I can't take any credit for this, for real. I watched him build a box, but I have had to do it a few times and it's not that hard. He just doesn't like my abstract style of taping. So yeah, and I've never had a problem that way. And I ship mostly Canada and the US.
Right. Question about your Instagram account. Has that helped you get sales globally? Like, what's the furthest afield you've gotten a sale, say, from Instagram?
I think really the US is most of my furthest away. I have a painting in Italy and I have a painting in Australia, and I don't think it was through Instagram. It was more through connections.
Great. I'm trying to go through the questions again. I don't see too many more. One I was curious about, and I know you talked about Penny Lane quite a bit.
Yeah.
Just when you were talking about your early work and how you had so many different kind of styles and you were all over the place, like what, and I think that's just common for so many artists that are starting out, or if you're starting with a new medium that you haven't done before.
Yeah.
What was sort of the thing for you that helped? Because your work looks so cohesive. I mean, you have this very obvious body of work that, has your style. Like, what was it that kind of clinched that for you? Was it just working through with Thrive for a year or so, or was it just continual consultations, or what was it for you, do you think?
I think it was a mix of that. I think it was also, I'm really as I go through this process or maybe go through life, I'm more drawn to minimal style. And so I just kept taking things out. And it would make me feel better to take these things out. And so it's kind of gone that way. And I don't get bored of painting my style. I find it really exciting, even though it is cohesive. I don't have the desire to try something new. I just want to see, I just kind of go with it, and then it flows into something else. And I think that's mysterious and fun for me to, because I don't know why really. I just like to, right now I have some lines that are doing a little bit more, and I think it's quite I think it has something to do with like just my quirks, and I just kind of go with it, and it's all a mystery to me.
Connected to that, someone's asking if you started in abstract style right away. Like, was that always what you were drawn to? And who are some of maybe your favorite abstract artists?
Oh, well, I think first I think I was in my early 20s, and my dad and I were doing those like kind of, when you're with your friends in your 20s and your parents feel like they've been forgotten. My dad and I took a watercolor course together, which was really nice. And so I was quite obsessed with watercolor for a while. And even now when we go on trips, I feel anxious if I don't paint. So I bring little watercolor pads, and usually everybody starts using them, which now I learned I have to bring more paper. But abstract, I mean, I love Scott Sume's work. It's just so minimal, and I really like I think they're quirky in my mind. I really like that kind of look. Christine Breckley, I like the flow of her art. Of course, my studio partner, she is a photographer, but it's quite abstract right now. Shara Gold's work. I mean, I could go on and on. This whole community, I feel bad if I start and then I forget somebody, because I love everybody.
I'm just sort of looking, some of the questions are very specific that I think we can answer kind of in the, once we post this video recording online, we can include some of the links where people are asking about Thrive. They're asking about, names of help with shipping and shipping internationally, which I think, again, Carfax also has great articles on how to ship and deal with customs and all that. Yeah. So I think we can include that in the links, but is there any sort of other tips you might have for artists in regards to, just getting their work out there, or resources you would recommend as well besides Thrive? And
I follow the Gels Curator for a lot of resources. Create Magazine. There's lots and lots online on Instagram. Kind of look at an artist you might look up to and see who they follow, and then you can learn what connections might be beneficial for you. I can't think off the top of my head because I've talked so much. But my advice is to do things that scare you, that don't endanger you, but that scare you in the art business, and to expect those days where you just want to stick your head in the sand, because they'll pass and people will buy your work and keep on. Businesses grow. They say, like, I mean, every year you're going to sell more and more if you're putting that effort into it. So.
Which is connected to, I guess we'll take this as our last question since time is ticking. Someone's asking about maybe the books and podcasts you recommend, but I'm thinking maybe like, what is it that inspires you in terms of to keep going? I know it's always difficult to keep going as an artist full time. So what are some of the, whether it's a book or a podcast or some other resource that inspires you and motivates you?
This is probably the worst question to ask me, because I like crime podcasts. I like to still be part of my old job through podcasts. So my podcast choices probably aren't so inspiring, but I love listening to Ashley Longshore in a podcast. If you ever need to feel uplifted, I've also listened to all of the Jealous Curator podcasts, Art and Cocktails. There's another one that Smother something. I forget. Anyways, I can add it to the list. Right. But I do go back and forth from like crime to like these artists who are super optimistic and telling you that how to just do it. And that's what I really like. And people who are honest, like just that open, they are who they are, no apologies. And I find that really inspiring.
Yeah, well, I think you've inspired a lot of people tonight. I can see in the comments, like there's been a lot of, thank you for the great talk. And you have been very inspiring. Your story is very inspiring in terms of how you got started and just your dedication that you sort of maintained all the way from the beginning till now. So I know I got a lot out of your talk tonight, and I can tell just from the comments that a lot of other people did. So thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing it honestly, and giving us really good insight into all the work it does take to be an artist, because it does, and it's many different paths and many different ways we can all work at it. But I find your story very inspiring. So thank you for being here tonight.
That means a lot to me. I was worried I would only make sound effects tonight. So I'm glad I spoke and I meant something to somebody.
Thank you everyone again so much for coming. And thank you, Amy, for being a great guest.
Thanks everybody.
Okay, good night.
Night.